Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the private MentorFX mentorship. This is subsection 5 of the first section where we talk about structure. Right here, we're just looking at a gold chart on the 15-minute, and I'm going to basically very quickly explain to you how you can notice these MentorFX blocks as we covered in the last structure video, just so you have a better understanding about how to spot them, how to look for them, how the subjective rule with them works, and how they apply to each given time frame based on the time frame that you are looking at. Because as you understand, structure can differentiate and can switch back and forth based on the actual structure or time frame that you are working with at the time. So in this one, we are not going to cover the ideas of structure where we covered the larger moves backwards, right, as we said with these circles, or with the validation of structure by way of actual candles, right, with structure being shown potentially with nature as so. Instead, we're just going to look at the MentorFX block ideas and how you can use them to predict where structure is going to be. So again, as we cover the future sections and you guys understand how to find your points of interest and how to set up a bias using supply and demand zones as well as Wyckoff, these will make a lot more sense. However, right now, I just need a lot of you to understand how you can spot these, how you can go into your own charts, and how you can start to look at them. So if you're working with a 15-minute or any time frame, ultimately, go and find a low part of a chart, as you can see here, before a real markup, as we'd like to call, and find, so let's delete some of the stuff we see here, and find the last down move. So this is the final down move, and where it originated from, right? Give me a second, guys. So when you go and you find a chart, find the lowest part that you possibly can of it. Again, as you look at this, you'll recognize that when you do this, you'll start to see these structural shifts that begin to bring in higher prices. However, try and look at them from a MentorFX block perspective. What I mean by that is find the last low and now find the move that created this down low, right? Where did smart money or the institutions get involved the last time before to basically make this low happen? So in this case, it's subjective, and this is something that you guys need to understand about the MentorFX blocks, but ultimately it came from this move right here, right? This is where there was a pause, right? They bought here before they sold heavily. This is a down move before the up move occurred. Now, simultaneously, at that time, you can also use this one right here. This point right here is one that shows you the last time they sold in before the large buys began to put in higher prices for the markup. Now, let's use this one just for the sake of assessment and understand what validates a point like this. So this point is made, but this MentorFX block does not become valid and does not become a bullish signal until it trades above the high of the candle. So if we draw this across, you can see that this is the first time it got close. However, this does not validate this block. Instead, only when it trades above in this location right here with this candle, and again, it does not have to close, it only has to wick it. This did not wick, this wicked the open. It did not wick above the open. Give me another second, guys. Sorry guys, I got another call. So as you can see, this did not wick above it. So this is not a valid MentorFX block just yet for structural plays to the bullish side. However, the second this trades above it, not closes again, it can wick, then this is valid. And at this point, you can look for potential prices to come back into that location and give you buy opportunities to go higher. So as you can see, even though this came pretty deep into a retracement and began to put in potential bearish validated candle structure, it still came right back into this original MentorFX block and then gave you higher prices. Now, again, you can ask yourself, what move caused the move that came into this previous MentorFX block? So this move came from a number of places in this case. It came from this high, but most importantly, it came from this high right here. So the next MentorFX block would be from this high to this low. This is your block, right? This is the overall block. Now, the only time this block is valid to look for buys from is when price trades just above this high here, and that happens right here. The second this trades above, this MentorFX block has become valid to look for potential continuations and buys to the top side. And as you can see, price comes down and into that area. First, it barely comes to wicket. So again, it's making liquidity, and that's normal. It can make liquidity, but then it came and tapped it right there with this. Now, again, I ask you the same thing. What move caused this low in this market to form? Now, similarly, you can say that it was this one. You can also say that it was this one. It's a little hiccup. Or you can say it was this one, or you can say it was this one. In this specific case, the main one that I would use that actually caused this to happen would probably be this one, because this is where they first sold right, to get to this low. So you could use this or this. So in this case, let's just assume that it was this one for the purpose of explanation and highlight it from this high to the very low. That is the down move before an up move is potentially going to happen. Now, how do we validate this block? Only when it trades where? Above here. So all of this price action inside it is not the mitigation that you're looking for. You're waiting for it to trade above to make this demand zone valid as the MentorFX block and look for price to come back into it to then take it to higher prices. Now, as you can see, we get above it here, validating this block, looking for prices to come in and continue higher because theoretically, as we spoke about structure, order flow is locked in as per this low. And theoretically, if they want to go bullish, they will not on this specific time frame get below this point because below this point, they will be in too much negative positions and want to switch to a bearish bias. So again, we can follow this up. And again, notice how we are putting in prices. This low that came to mitigate this came from this high right here. And we can highlight that. Now, that MentorFX block where this demand zone only became valid when it wicked above it right here. And notice what it did after. It came to trade into it and traded higher. That move happened from this high to this low. And again, same thing occurred. Prices came into here and traded higher. Now, which move caused this low to form? You could say that it was this one right here or that it was this one right here. This will again depend on subjectivity. You can use this one and trade buys if that gets above it, or you can use this one if you want to be more safe. This is all up to preference. Price gets above there, and as you can see, comes right back into it, never getting below this point because structure is institutionally being delivered bullishly. So this demand zone should hold as orders below here are not worth coming to take out since these are the orders that are actually made by the banks in an overall voluminous move. So again, we come into this area and move higher. As we do that, we can ask ourselves the same question. What formed the lows that formed here? Well, it was the last place that they sold from, which was this high right here. And again, you can use this one here, or you can use this one to be more safe and understand what's happening. So that means that you are good to look for buys if price is to make its way back inside of this high right here. And as we watch this, I believe price, does it come back there? We can drag this out now, as you can see, because it hasn't came back there yet. And lo and behold, price comes into here at this exact point. And as that happens, right, so this is all applicable as a MentorFX block. As this gets hit, the low that created this low right here came from a number of places again. It came from this high, from this high, from this high, and from this high. And this is now up to you which one you want to use. So theoretically, we can say that it was this high right here, because that is the main one. However, if you want, because of how long it took to create, you can say it's from this low to this high right here. And basically, with this in your mind, you would wait for a validation of this point if price ever wicked above this point here. And if it did, then you're good to continue for buys on this bullish move up. And as you see, as we're doing this, using nothing else but these ideas of MentorFX blocks with the last down move before the up move and those validations of them over and over again can keep you in a specific bias over a long time, even on one such time frame. Now, as we keep running this up, you can see that that gets validated right here. So now it's valid for buys, and you're looking for price to continue as such. Shouldn't get below this low right here unless it wants to. So again, that's that wick low right there, as you can see. So price should not get down below this unless it wants to shift bearish. If we keep following this, you can begin to see what happens. Price does get down below it. Now, this doesn't mean that your MentorFX block was wrong. All it means is that the bias that you had prior on this specific time frame using MentorFX blocks was invalidated. And now, instead of trading the demand zone MentorFX blocks, you are going to be trading the supply zone MentorFX blocks. And what do I mean by that? As this low gets made, ask yourself what made this low, this move up here, right? And what made this move? It came from this low to this high. And similarly, you can follow it. Notice what price does. Price comes right back up into it. And as it comes back up into it, we form a potential new MentorFX block. If this is a new MentorFX block, this is the one that technically exists. We have this high that is created by this low, which means that if price gets below this point here, we are good to look for sells on the retracement into these MentorFX block supply zones again. Now, instead of that happening, you will see that price actually goes to make a new high. But this is still within the previous MentorFX block. So we have still not invalidated our bearish movement in price. Now, what caused this high right here to form? Well, this low right here. You can draw that out. And again, this is not valid for sells yet. This one specifically, this one is, but this one is not until it gets below this low again. The second this low is traded through, we are good to go for sells. As you watch this develop, none of this is good to go for sells. This is still equal until right there. If you zoom in, you can see that this wick came just below that MentorFX block. So this overall supply zone is good to go for sells because you are operating under the assessment on this specific time frame that price will not get back above this high because they are in sells, and this is the last place where they sold, and they don't want to get above there because they're not going to be making profit then. And as you can see, price comes back into it and drops off from there. As such, now you can follow this and you can continue following this. I'm just going to move along because you guys should understand this now, and you can see how it holds once the bias switches for a long period of time, as you can see, and it's still holding right now. And theoretically, under this assessment, you can continue to expect new bearish price action to be put in motion because of these supply zones from the MentorFX blocks to continue expecting lower prices. Now, this does not mean that only the 15-minute is what reigns true. On this specific time frame, the 15-minute and these moves are the ones that reign true. However, you can also use confirmations using what you understand about these MentorFX blocks that form. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's consider this MentorFX block right here, or even this one right here that formed. After the formation of this MentorFX block right here, we are already expecting, as we said, so let's just make this smaller so we can see it. We are expecting price to make a movement into here, either to the open or to the 50 or anywhere inside there, right, before giving us lower prices. Now, instead of just trading the 15-minute blindly in this case, you could get to a lower time frame and begin to watch the movements inside there, looking for a MentorFX block on a lower time frame to give you a confirmation of structural movement in a given direction. So again, this is where you're seeing how important bias is to the overall belief structure that you have around the market. So if we're already biased bearish from this 15-minute MentorFX block, that should give us a supply zone from which we can sell into lower prices, either at the open, the 50, or any place inside here, right? Then we can also wait for this type of setup to occur on a lower time frame in these areas. So let's play price out a little bit, and you will see that at this specific point, the low that created this high would be this one. And if price got below here, this is good to go for sells to continue to lower prices. Now, let's get even lower because let's say that you want to get into a better position, right? Let's see price play out. Actually, let's stay on the 5-minute just to not keep it too confusing. You can watch price play out as such, waiting for it to give you potential setups. As you can see, price has never gotten below that point before making a new high. Now, inside of this MentorFX block on the higher time frame, the low that created this high right here was this one right here, which means that when price gets below this, which it did right here, you are good to go for sells. So actually, at this specific point right here, you're actually valid to begin to sell this overall area. You can literally take this sell as it is right now because it has already wicked it. So it's created this block. Again, you do not need a close. You just need a wick because it's showing you what the overall order flow wants to do. Now, again, as you look at this, it looks rather large, like the stop loss looks rather large. So of course you can get on a 1-minute and look for the same confirmations within that area. How so? Well, instead of selling this area as it is, you can wait for price to come in here, make a new block as such, right? The MentorFX block, the move down below, creating that into a valid supply zone and trading that to get lower. Or you can be happy with your 5-minute and take this as an entry based on that 15-minute confirmation block, right? As such. And then what you'll notice is as we zoom out, that huge stop loss becomes relatively small in the overall picture, right? And you can take this to lower prices, partially below lows, breaking even very early if you'd like to. And as you can see, that same trade that looked like it had a relatively large stop loss has already ran about 1 to 11. And this is how you can begin to look for refined entries of that nature. Now, again, if we get back into this area right here and take a look at that 5-minute setup that we just looked at, right? It was right here. It came to test it and continued. And again, on the 5-minute now, if we were to outline the same MentorFX blocks, you have this move down. And what's the move up into it that was created by this mitigation? Well, it was from here, right? Notice what happens. Price gets below that, tests it, continues. Now, what created this high here? Well, you can argue it's this one, right? So we're just using the lows. What gets below that? Right here. Then look what happens. It mitigates it and continues. What caused this mitigation? Well, this low to this high. And again, you can look for sells off there. So this is multi-level confirmation of that 15-minute area right here by using 5-minute areas. Now, the same way that we did that, like we just said a second ago, if you were on the 1-minute, right? Now you can wait for that confirmation. And this is where it can get a little bit interesting and tricky. They are not always going to hold. We have a mitigation right here. That mitigation is made by this low right here. Now notice what happens. Price gets below that and validates this MentorFX block. And notice what it does after that. It actually comes back up into it and gives you a good setup that you can take to the low parts. Now, Look what happens after though. It actually trades through it. So if you had been managing this correctly, you would not have been stopped on these sells because you would have been able to get out at break even after price got below these structural lows. However, this is why we speak about structure changing back and forth on multiple timeframes. So when you start looking for confirmations on lower timeframes, you need to be cognizant of the fact that price and structure can change on you short term, but they are still part of a longer term bias. Remember, this is only the 5-minute, which is based inside that 15-minute, right? And again, they're all just using nothing more than the MentorFX block. Now, the same way, if you waited again for a confirmation, then you have this high. This high is created by this low. So even though these MentorFX blocks on the 1-minute time frame and these supply zones did not hold, this does not mean that we are shifting our bias because our bias is still preset by our higher time frame. We have this move into here, and again, this MentorFX block will only be validated once we get below this given point. And what do you see happen here? We validate that, and as we validate that, we come and trade into it. Now, notice how this high was again created by this low right here. That means that all of this price action is invalid for these new sells, and instead, this is the one that reigns supreme. Now, as you can see, the only time that breaks is right here, and that means that it was off of this high, right? So this is the overall MentorFX block that forms inside that, and again, you are free to go for sells from this open at this point here, or even at the 50% here. So if you took a 50% of this MentorFX block, so again, it's just this overall move up before the move down, and you took a sell off that, then you have refined that overall 15-minute block that you're already bearish on to that 5-minute block that you're bearish on, the MentorFX block, this supply zone, to the 1-minute blocks, the MentorFX blocks within those that have taken you to lower prices. And lo and behold, that's exactly what you get. And as you can see, you'd already be break even or you'd be partially on the way. And that same trade that we just took from a very, very much larger potential stop loss was now just made significantly smaller by waiting for the setup. Now, if we zoom in here, you'll again notice the same thing we spoke about. Despite the fact that we are trading the 1 minute and we have the setups that we need, price does not have to hold, right, for that specific location, which is why understanding where to partial, if you are using confirmation entries, is vital to understanding your structural plays. Because even though this came and got stopped, it was only because it was testing the higher time frame 5-minute areas that we denoted up here, as you can see. So you have to always be cognizant of what the higher timeframes are telling you, and this is how you can use the MentorFX blocks on their way in a bullish market or a bearish market to get involved. And again, they can occur on every single time frame, so you need to understand what you're looking for. The same way we did that on the 5-minute and 15-minute is the same way that it will apply on even a 4-hour. What do I mean by that? Let's just take a look at prices right here. What's the low that created this high, right? So again, follow this up. It's this one right here. Okay, fantastic. Now, what happened? It traded below, making it valid. What did it do after? It came and validated it right here and traded below. Now, when did it validate it again? Right here. What caused this move here? You could argue it was either this one or this one. Let's use this one because it's easier to see. This move comes up into it. When does it get valid? Right here. That means everything else is valid for a sell in this area. And overall, you can be bearish using the MentorFX blocks. And what do you have? You have to move up into there, again, from a low, and what happens? It gets validated here, and price continues to test and test and test those areas over and over again, creating more and more MentorFX blocks on the way down. Now, within that price action, if you are operating also on 1 hour and 15 minutes, you are going to see MentorFX blocks that form in both directions. That is why, again, you always have to be cognizant of what the higher time frame is telling you and how to use that higher time frame with the lower time frame confirmation to get involved and to form a bias structurally about where you want to go. Now you can partner that with your ideas of supply and demand that we're going to be covering in the future sections, and Wyckoff to be even more, to have even more confirmation and more probability of a certain direction being remained, right? Or you can partner that with the lower time frame MentorFX block confirmations with the knowledge that they can switch. So you need to understand how to also manage your positions, which we will talk about in the future section. So thank you so much, guys. And I hope this explained to you how you can use structure in the market. And of course, if you have any questions, ask them in the upcoming webinars that we always have or at me in the chat. Thank you very much.